Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's fantasy football strategy show. Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. I'm here, as always, with Casey Vlad to the Bone Scheinvold. By the way, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. I forgot to introduce myself. And Ross the Boss.
Hi, everybody. Ross the Boss coming live from La, California. I'm excited for football season more than anybody. We have the quarterbacks and tight ends rankings and what you should be looking for. Some few sleepers, a few guys you should stay away from. I can't wait to get started.
Yep, this is a very exciting time of year. Of course, we're still playing some baseball. We're dragging through that, but now's the time where we start to get really excited about football. And so let's talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about quarterbacks and tight ends. I don't know how you guys did it, by the way. You know, usually we do like a top 10 and then maybe a next 10. I did it by tiers.
Okay.
So, I have them ranked in order. We're going to have sleepers. We're going to have busts. We're going to have value picks. So let's talk about it. Let's start with tiers. I want to hear who's in your first tier of quarterbacks, because, there's a lot of arguments about how many should be in that. Casey, we'll start with you, if I can put you on the spot.
You're putting me on the spot. Okay. Well, my first tier is about 4 deep.
Same with me.
I wouldn't go much farther than that. So
no, same with me.
I don't know if you want to know who the 4 are, but
yeah, give me the 4.
We'll just guess.
No, let's just talk in the abstract the entire time. No,
is JJ McCarthy in the top 4? Yes or no? That's all I want to hear.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, and he also wasn't. But I was high on him, but not that high. Ross,
I have. If you want my top,
go ahead.
4,
Give your top 4. Let's do
Jalen Hurts at number 1, Patrick Mahomes at number 2, Lamar Jackson at number 3, and Josh Allen at number 4.
Interesting. Josh Allen at 4. Now, most lists have Josh Allen first. I think.
I mean,
not anymore. Tell him why, Case.
That's right.
On Tuesday.
Well, for me, it's that receiving core. Like, his top 3 receivers are Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel. They don't exactly invoke memories of the greatest show on turf.
That's a good point.
His value comes in the fact that they don't have a great power running game, and so he's going to get a lot of those short yardage rushing touchdowns. I don't think he's going to put up the passing numbers that he has in the past, and so I think he's going to slide a little bit.
That's a good point. Ross, who do you have, let's say, in your top 4? I don't know if you had do you have a 4 at the top of the tier?
I'll give you top 4. I have just 2 people in my top tier, but that's fine. I'll give 4.
Yep.
I get it. It's fine. I have Patrick Mahomes just because how well he does every week, 300 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns, consistency. I said 3 times, Casey Scheinfold. Number 2, I'm taking, I'll just take it because I'm a homer. I'll take Joe Burrow. If he's healthy and that offensive line is healthy, Higgins and Chase together again. I love it. I love what he'll do. I love the ceiling he has. I'm taking Joe Burrow. Number 3, this guy's a stud. And, I love Lamar Jackson. If he's, again, a guy in November that disappears, gets hurt, I don't know what happens. But I love Lamar Jackson just because he has a great running back now, and his receivers have improved also. I love Lamar. And number 4, Jalen Hurts, new offense in Philly. They told him they better learn this playbook during the spring and during the summer, because it's all new plays, all new stuff. I'm excited to see it. So those are my top 4.
All right, here's my top 4. I do have Josh Allen number 1 still. And
really?
Part of the reason, yes, I do. And part of the reason that I have him there is his receiving core wasn't impressive last year either. I mean, Diggs was basically non-existent. He still did it. And it's the rushing touchdowns that make it. Listen, it's close. I mean, I have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts, like pretty much all bunched together. But I do have one other guy in the tier, and that's CJ Stroud.
Love it.
I think he could be completely explosive, and he already showed that he can do it. I mean, I think he's there. So I have him in my top 4. What do you guys think?
I love CJ Stroud. Great pick, Dr. Dan Ratner. His receiving core, I think, is one of the top in football. I mean,
Diggs is his 3rd receiver.
Diggs is his 3rd. I mean, Nico Collins, wow. Excuse me, but he just signed a big deal. I love Nico, and they got Tank Dell back from injury. That's a team to reckon with, and I agree with you 100%. I think that's a great sleeper. I have more of a sleeper pick. That's what Casey and I are thinking, more than a top tier guy. But I love your picks. That's great.
All right, let's go to the second tier, guys. I have 5 people in this tier.
5. 5. Okay.
Five.
I do. We are on the same page with this stuff, Dan. I have 5 as well, although we don't have the same players clearly.
Right.
I bet you guys come close. Go ahead. I bet you guys are very close.
Second tier. The top of that tier for me is Kyler Murray. I know he was hurt most of last year, but every time he's played, he's put up top 5 QB numbers. I think he might be the best value because you can get him after that rush of quarterbacks goes, and he's going to give you rushing numbers and passing yards. Then I actually have Dak Prescott. That's a bit of a surprise to some people, but their running back room is Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle. And then what else? So he's going to be throwing the ball 400 plus times. If he stays healthy, he's going to put up incredible numbers. Then I have CJ Stroud, similar to Dak Prescott, also in that very high ceiling. He has a little better running game there. And so I just think that neither of them run very much. Then I have Joe Burrow, as Ross talked about. Again, he doesn't run as much as some of these other guys. That's why he's out in that second tier. And then Anthony Richardson, probably the most kind of polarizing player. He could be the number 1 quarterback at the end of the year if he delivers on his potential, or he could be like he was last year, 3 games or 4 games, and then he doesn't do anything the rest of the year, and you're left kind of holding your shirt there. Anthony Richardson not only got hurt last year, remember, guys, he only had one season in college where he played and wasn't injured. Now, granted, it was an amazing season, and it got him that number, whatever pick it was, 2, 3, somewhere in that range, 3 or 4 pick. But he hasn't done it yet, so I can't put him any higher than that. And even so, I struggled between he and Jordan Love as who to put next. I gave him the advantage because of his incredible running.
Nice. Okay. I just wanted to say hi to Ayush. Thanks for joining us here. He says, what's good? Everything's good right now. Love it.
Fantasy football's back.
We're very excited about it. Ross, you want to go for next, or you want me to?
Sure. I mean, Casey, again, I think I've been reading your emails because you and I have a lot of the same ideas. I do have Josh Allen in the second tier, though. I moved him down. So you can
all the way to the second tier.
You can flip-flop him and Joe Burrow, and I flip-flop. That's what I did. I flip-flop Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. I love Anthony Richardson, too. His ceiling is really high, but I'm worried about injury. He runs the ball a lot, and he doesn't understand. These guys that play safety and even cornerbacks, these guys hit hard, and they're like over 200 pounds. They mean business. And they see a quarterback defensive like that, they'll knock him out. They don't care. So I'm worried about his health. CJ Stroud, I love. I wouldn't mind him having my guy be CJ Stroud this year as quarterback on my fantasy team. I think he'll have big games, 300 yards a game, 2 or 3 touchdowns. He likes to run the ball a little bit too. I love that Ohio State Buckeye guy. So CJ Stroud, a good pick in the 6th or 7th round, I'm feeling. What do you think, Dr. Dan Ratner? 6th or 7th round, yes or no?
If I can get him in the 6th or 7th round, I'm going to be happy. I have him ranked as my 4th quarterback overall. I think this time next year, CJ Stroud could be the number 1 quarterback picked.
I mean, write that down, Casey Scheinfeld.
We'll see.
Quote him on that right now. Dak Prescott, I can't give a suggestion to take Dak Prescott. I'm not going to do it. I'm staying away. Jordan Love, I think it's his time. He signed a huge contract during the summer. Big money, like Dan Ratner money. And this guy better produce. He has good receivers in Green Bay. I think he'll be a really good fantasy player, and I have him in my second tier, but that's me. I know you guys don't agree, but those are my second tier guys. Let me know, Dan, what you think.
So I have Jordan Love actually not only in my top tier, I have him ranked 7th overall. I'm very, very high on him coming into this year. So I have Lamar Jackson leading up this tier. He's just below that top tier for me, but he's great, and he's at the top of this tier. Joe Burrow would be higher, but his injury risk has really gotten to be a question mark enough that I've got to bump him down. I understand what you're saying, Ross.
Even with the new hairstyle and the haircut and
even when he looks like Eminem, you know.
I mean, I think.
Listen, one of Eminem's top songs is "Without Me," and that's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about. All right, now Jordan Love, I have 7th. I have Anthony Richardson 8th. I mean, he's got huge upside, but the injury risk, it's exactly what Ross said. I don't know that he understands how to protect himself, and he's going to get hit pretty hard. The next guy I have is Kyler Murray. Case, I really liked what you said about Kyler Murray. He's extremely underrated. Great value pick that you can get. I have him 9th. We're going to get to the next tier, but let's take a comment from Ayush. He says, I got a troubling question I want your guys' input on. My draft is tonight, and I am pick 10 in a 12-man full PPR ESPN league.
Okay.
I'm thinking of taking Saquon/Kyren or possibly Saquon/Gibbs if they fall. Hopefully you're aware that Gibbs is a bit dinged up right now.
They're expecting him back for the start.
He'll be back. You guys, it's not serious.
I think it'll be fine. I just wanted to mention it. Then he says, what do you guys think about that? Or should I go AJ Brown, Jettas? Why am I blanking on who that is? Maybe that's a typo. Garrett and Gibbs in the second round. I can guarantee y'all that Gibbs will fall to me at pick 15 if I go wide receiver first. What do you guys like more? In a PPR league, I would go AJ Brown there. Of the ones you mentioned, that's the one that jumps out at me.
Well, Jettas, I don't know if that's Jefferson because
it could be James Jett, who used to play for the Raiders 10 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah. If you want to take him in the first round, you can, but join our league if you're going to do that.
I don't think I would take, I thought it was Jefferson. I don't think I would take Saquon or Gibbs at 10. Honestly, I have Jonathan.
Running back there.
I have Jonathan Taylor ranked higher than both of them going into this season. But you can't go wrong with either. On the wide receiver side, if Jefferson falls to 10, I don't see how you don't take.
Okay, he says it is Jefferson.
Because that's the number one there. And if you think that Garrett Wilson is going to be, if you think Aaron Rodgers is going to play the full season, Garrett Wilson has a Devontae Adams sort of ceiling there in terms of the skill set and what Rodgers likes to do. AJ Brown, I like, but he's sharing targets now with Saquon, with Devonta Smith, and with Dallas Goedert. That's a lot of ball to go around. You can't say that about Jefferson or Garrett Wilson. So that's why I would rank those.
The only thing I'll say though is, I mean, AJ Brown's had that
he's
pretty much the whole time.
Yes, I know that. But if you notice, he'll have these games where it's like 110 and 2 touchdowns. And then for 3 straight games, Devonta Smith will go off and then he'll go for 140 and 2 touchdowns again. It's not the consistent volume that you get with those other 2 wide receivers.
I like that. You said, I know that, like Lieutenant Dan did about being told he had no legs.
Yeah.
So I think if Jefferson falls there, don't be scared off by Sam Darnold starting there. Anybody throwing to Jefferson is worth that pick.
And he's going to be the first look every time.
And listen, you might be able to get him at pick 10 because of what's going on in Minnesota. So right. I think you'd grab him. Jefferson all the way. I might even go Jefferson and then AJ Brown and let these running backs go.
AJ Brown won't make it to 15. That's the point. He's picking at 10 and then 15. And so
I think you got to take one of them.
At 15, that's where you can get. Now, if you are dying to go running back at 10 and get one of those top 3 or 4, then I'd take Jonathan Taylor at running back at 10. And then I'd be looking at like Marvin Harrison Jr. somewhere at 15, because that's another guy who's just going to be a volume monster for Kyler Murray.
All right, let's get back to quarterbacks for a second. But Ayush, if you have further questions on that, let us know. Third tier. I know we got slightly different tiers, but basically the same. Case, who do you have at the top of your third tier?
I have Jordan Love, number 1 in my third tier. Then the rest are kind of the other 4 or 5 are my value / sleeper picks. I think Tua could have a really big year down in Miami. Remember, I think he finished with the most passing yards last year.
And that was just big news that he finished at all.
Right.
The fact that he got through a full season tells you he's a different kind of quarterback to rely on.
And then, I'm going to go with Ross's darling, Jared Goff, who has weapons beyond weapons between Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. And if Jameson Williams gets on the field and does anything like he did at Alabama, that's a pretty sick receiving room. And he's a great dome quarterback. And I think I read he has 14 games in a dome this year. And so you don't have to worry as much. He has the game at Chicago, the game at Green Bay. Those are the only 2, I think, cold weather outdoor games he has at all. And then my last guy in this tier is actually Matthew Stafford. People sleep on him if he's healthy and he's throwing to Puka and he's throwing to Cooper Kupp. This guy just puts up numbers. He's not going to run for you. You're not going to get a single running touchdown, but I could easily see him getting 35 to 40 passing touchdowns on the year, which is going to be good enough to finish in that top 15, top 12 quarterback area.
All right, Ross, let's go to you on basically the third round tier.
So as I mentioned, Jared Goff, to me, I made big bets on him winning the MVP this year.
I said MVP on Tuesday. Yeah.
I think MVP, this guy's going to have over 4,000 yards. He has a great offense behind him, a great running game, a good defense. Detroit's going to be a team to be reckoned with. You're not going to be sitting around Thanksgiving just not watching the lines anymore. Like Dan just turns it off. He's reading books. He's playing games. He's not even watching football. But now he's going to watch the lines. It's okay, fine. I can fantasize, can I? But I like Goff in the third tier. Kyler Murray, Casey said it perfectly. I don't have to tell you about him. He's going to have a big year with Harrison as his main squeeze. I like that a lot too. Jaden Daniels, I have to go with him just because he started his career at Arizona State, and Casey knows my love for my school.
Go Wildcats.
He looked great in preseason. His first pass was a big bomb. He ran in a touchdown. This guy looked great in preseason. I know it's preseason, I get it, but I think he'll throw a lot of passes. I think let's let him go off. And I think the Washington Commanders, I didn't say Redskins, I said Commanders, Dr. Dan Ratner, so you can't beat me. So there you go. But I think Jaden Daniels would be a great third-tier pick. I don't know if I would take him as my starter, but I for sure would take him as my backup. And another guy that I think is going to have a big year is Kirk Cousins. I just love the guy. I fell in love with him when I watched the quarterback documentary on Netflix last year. This guy's a good dude, and he's a good dad. And because of that, I have him in my third tier. And I think Atlanta's going to be a good team this year. I think they'll be good. They have a good running game. They got some good receivers there. And I like Kirk Cousins. I'm only worried about his health because of his age. But let's see what happens. But those are my guys that we didn't really talk about too much, but there's some good sleeper picks in there. But I love Goff. I wouldn't mind having him as my starting quarterback every week either. So there you go.
I actually have Goff heading up this tier. I think he's got all the weapons. He's got no real question marks. And he's just emerging more and more. Now I'll get to that in a second, but let's get to Ayush's follow-up. Overall, I heard then you guys would like me to go wide receiver running back more than JT and Gibbs/Kyren in the first 2 rounds. I had the mentality that start with 2 stud running backs would be better just because of the wide receiver value.
You're thinking like it's 1995 with Terrell Davis running for the Denver Broncos. Those days are over with the running game. I mean, you got to go.
But let's hear
him out. Go wide receiver. Trust me with wide receiver. You'll be saying in November.
I would like to be the Ross translator if I could.
Yes. All right. Go ahead.
I'll be his anti-anger kind of translator from Key and Peele.
Anger, passion.
I understand what you're saying, Ayush, and there is some sense to that. But if you're in a PPR league, you need a tier 1 wide receiver if it's available. And if you wait until round 3 to get a wide receiver, sure, you could get a Devonta Smith, a Waddle, a Debo, or a Kupp. But what you're talking about with those names you said, they're all number 2 receivers. They're all the second look receiver in that offense. And so they're not going to command the 130 to 170 targets that the tier 1 guys are going to be. And you're losing out on the potential of 2 to 3 points a week just in catches, 3 or 4 points a week, even sometimes. The running backs, there's more depth there than you think. You can get a James Conner later in the draft. You can wait and get in the 3rd round. You might even be able to get a Derrick Henry in the 3rd round. And that is somebody who could be a stud. You're talking about 2 stud wide running backs. The kind of theory now is either the 0 running back strategy or the hero running back strategy. 0 is where you don't take one in the first 2 or 3 or 4 rounds because you're just getting those big pass catchers. And then you look for those kind of running backs who you can move in and out based on matchups. And then the hero is you get an anchor running back. And then your second one can be a Devin Singletary or a Joe Mixon or a Zach Moss in Cincinnati, those guys who are going to give you adequate numbers.
Starting, but keep going.
Whatever. But you'll have that number 1 wide receiver who's always going to demand targets. The Jefferson, the Chase, the St. Brown, the Debo, not Debo.
I just think
Tyreek Hill.
I agree with Casey. In a PPR league, you need to get that wide.
If it's not PPR, that's different. If there's no points for receptions, then if you can get the top 2 running backs or 2 of the top 3 running backs, then it makes sense.
Yep. Now he did say, if you guys are familiar with ESPN average draft position, around pick 34 and 39, I see Devonta Smith, Waddle, Andrews, Debo, Kupp, or any of the top 3 quarterbacks. With this in mind, guys still like wide receivers. I do. Casey does. Ross, I think you're agreeing too. But, these are great value picks that you're getting. But as a number 2 receiver, I wouldn't want them as my number 1. The one exception potentially is Kupp, but he's got a lot of injury risk. And I guess Debo also, but he's got a lot of injury risk. Kupp would be the only guy. The way I think about it is, would you trade the two guys that you get? Would you trade your first round pick and these receivers and a running back for a different combination? When you get Jefferson and let's say Rachaad White, I'd much rather have that than getting Saquon and Devontae Smith or Kupp. I mean, to me, value is tricky because it can look like there's value just because you like the guys that are there, but you got to think about whether that's providing value to your overall setup.
And before, and Ayush, just to finish this up, you have to take what you're most comfortable with. We can only tell you what our opinions are. You have to be
go with what you think.
You have to want who's on your roster. The last thing you want is to go against what you think is best. Go with what somebody else thinks is best, and then it doesn't work out, and you're filled the whole time with the what ifs.
All right,
if you want 2 stud running backs, go for it. I mean, Gibbs is a receiving back. Just make sure if it's a PPR, you're getting your 2 running backs are going to catch passes.
Just build accordingly. Then if you're going to draft a wide receiver, take Kupp. Don't take Devontae Smith. Take the guy who could be explosive there. So you got to adjust what you do.
Listen, I have a friend of mine that's on the broadcast that has soccer practice coming up, so we got to.
That's right. We got to move on. So let's do this. Well, also, Casey, if you need to leave early, you can leave early. Ross and I will continue.
He's not going anywhere. It's going to take us.
Here's the thing. So I'm going to read the rest of my top 20 quarterback list. Each of you will do that. Then we'll go to sleepers, busts, and value picks, and then we'll move to tight ends. So here's the rest of it. I got Jared Goff, Dak Prescott. I like Justin Herbert. I know he's an injury risk. I know he's not been that good in recent years, but I still like him. What I don't like about him so much is that Harbaugh is the coach. That worries me. Brock Purdy is next. Very solid guy, back end guy. I have Tua next just because I'm not sure about the injury risk still, even though I like him a lot. Aaron Rodgers has big upside, coming back from a major injury, though, so who knows. I really like Kirk Cousins also, Ross. I think that's a great call, especially for a second quarterback. If you have Kirk Cousins, take him second, and then he could end up being a starter on your team. You could trade your starter. Matthew Stafford's another guy that I loved, so Case, I think it was wise to highlight him. Trevor Lawrence barely cracks the top 20. I'm not even sure he does anymore. And that's.
I mean, let's talk about Trevor Lawrence real quick. You brought his name up. I mean, he's digressing every year again. I feel he's just getting worse, Casey Scheinfeld. I don't know about you, but I mean, he came out as a rookie. He looked really good. The second year, not okay. Third year, not that great. And the last year was just a disaster. I mean, I would stay away. I don't think we should even bring his name up in this broadcast. I don't know why you even said his name. But
I've said his name so we could have this discussion. But okay. And really, I'm saying he's not going to be on any of my teams. No. Jaden Daniels, though, I like him. I like him better than Caleb Williams this year. I don't trust the Bears to bring in a rookie quarterback and do very well with them. So it's not that I don't like Caleb Williams, but I like Jaden Daniels better.
I think Caleb Williams will be better in real life football. I think Jaden Daniels is the better fantasy quarterback.
All right, guys, round out anybody we haven't mentioned, or we can just move to sleepers, busts, and value picks, whatever you think. We've covered most of the ground.
Yeah, we covered. I think we could just do a couple busts, couple value picks.
Okay, so let's each name one or two sleepers that we have on our list. Ross, you want to start?
I'm going to do it, and you're going to start. You'll probably delete me from your friend list, but I'm going to say it just because I think he's going to have a good year, and if he stays healthy, Casey and I want to get a sign that says
you'll never be deleted.
Healthy. No, if he stays,
if he stays right healthy. Across the top of the screen.
Big if.
Because I always say Deshaun Watson of Cleveland. I
have him as one of my sleepers. I do.
Oh, you do? I know that's like saying Beetlejuice 3 times to you, and I get it. I understand. I understand your hatred.
My head's shrinking.
Or whatever. But I think Deshaun Watson, again, I think he's a lot to prove. He signed that huge deal with you guys, and I think that he's going to have a good year. I just feel it. I don't know why. And another pick that I like a lot. You guys said his name a bunch of times, but I really feel like Tua is going to have a big year. Just because of his receiving core with Waddle and Hill, and he had some huge games last year. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, he had like a game almost like over 400, a few games over 400 yards. So those two guys I'd like as not as your starting quarterback, but as guys you pick late, just so you guys have him on your bench if your starting quarterback gets hurt. But Watson
showed signs of life. The Browns actually somehow do know what they're doing on offense for the first time in decades.
Yes.
And he's got the talent to do it. I'm not saying he will, but I would definitely take him as a second quarterback pick and hope that he explodes, because if he does, you can deal your top quarterback. Case, who do you got?
Well, most of the guys have been said. I'm just going to name one that hasn't been said, and he's going to be the guy I'm drafting as my second quarterback in one quarterback leagues, probably more than anybody else, and that's Will Levis.
That's who I have also.
Because, I mean, look, his wide receiver room is Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, and Okonkwo. His running backs are Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, both receiving backs. And this guy was top 3 in the league in air yards in terms of pushing the ball downfield when he played last year. Tennessee has got rid of Derrick Henry. They're not going to be a ground and pound offense. They're going to be opened up. He might throw a fair share of picks. Don't get me wrong. You're going to get 1 to 2 interceptions probably each game. But if it comes with the 300 plus yards and the potential for 3 or 4 touchdowns every game, I'm going to take a flyer on this guy, because to me, he could be that kind of breakout player who surprises everybody and becomes a top 15 quarterback.
I mean, you could say Will Levis might be this year's Jordan Love, where a lot of people were not that high on him. But so I had Will Levis and Deshaun Watson as my
this year's CJ Stroud. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud we saw a great game out of him in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, even though they lost that game. We were like, wow. But then he wasn't the number 1 pick. Everybody was like Bryce Young, everything. CJ Stroud, the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season was better than average, but not great. And then all of a sudden he just figured it out. And it seemed like he learned how to dominate the game. Will Levis has the offense to do that. They've invested a lot in their offensive line over the last few years too. So I mean,
he also showed some great things last year.
Well, he's got a cannon for an arm. So I'm just hoping if he puts it all together, I have him as my second quarterback that I'm going to take in almost every league, because he's one of those guys who you're not worried about him busting because you have a number 1 in front of him.
Well, guys, he won't get hurt. He's built like a rock. I mean, I've never seen this guy in the size of his arms and everything.
I mean, you can't hurt a guy who drinks coffee with mayonnaise. You can't hurt a guy like that.
No,
that was so gross. All right, listen. We already basically covered busts and value picks when we talked about things, so I'm going to shift gears to give Casey some time.
You never talked about Bo Nix. You didn't say anything about Bo Nix.
I did not. Would you like to say something about him?
No, I'm just kidding.
He's in Denver.
He plays in Denver, and he's a 25-year-old rookie. That's all I can say.
I'm in Delaware. Little Wayne's World reference for you. Okay, so listen, Casey, you don't have much time. Hi, Wayne. Hi. Let's rope and ride some Broncos. Okay, we're derailing entirely. Okay, let's do this, guys. Because Casey doesn't have a lot of time. Case, I just want you to run through your tight end tiers, give us a sleeper and a bust. Then you can get out the door. Ross and I will finish up.
No, we can just whatever Casey says.
We're fine. I'll make it work. All right,
you're gonna make it work. I love it.
Make it work. So my first tier is 3. I only have 3 in my top tier. My number 1 might surprise you, but I have to give you this is my number 1 as with a caveat. Mm-hmm. So my number 1 is Mark Andrews, but he's Mark Andrews with Isaiah Likely as his handcuff, because Mark Andrews, when he played, was a top 3 tight end. And then when he got hurt and Isaiah Likely came in, guess what? He was a top 5 tight end every weekend, every game he played. So he, to me, is the highest floor and has an equally high number 1 ceiling. So he's number 1. Number 2 is Travis Kelce. I know he's 36 or whatever he is, and they're talking about him past his prime. He's still the greatest quarterback in the league's favorite target, especially when they get around the end zone. He's number 2. And Sam Laporta, last year's number 1 tight end. I have him at 3 only because that's a really crowded pass catching team in Detroit. A lot of players who command a lot of targets. And so I still think he's going to be great. Don't get me wrong. I have him in that first tier, but I think Mark Andrews is your safest bet if you get Isaiah Likely.
Oh, and see, if always bumps people down for me. I assume injury risk. Ross, how about you? Your top tier, how many are in it?
My top tier, I have 3. A little different than Casey's. My top tight end this year is going to be Sam Laporta.
Same with me.
Detroit, just because I love Goff and I just feel Laporta's in his second year. And I think last year he proved himself to be a really good tight end. I think this year he'll be a lot better. My second one is Kelce. I'm worried about his age, but again, he's the favorite target of Mahomes, so I got to keep him in there. And third, you guys will never guess I'm picking him, but I'm going to do it just because he has a new quarterback this year, and his quarterback loves to throw two tight ends.
Kyle Pitts.
I have Kyle Pitts.
Oh, here it is.
Wow.
Guessed it. Kyle Pitts is
Wow.
my third tight end in the top tier. I think Pitts is a great value pick also because not that many people will be picking him in the first 7-8 rounds. So
I think he is a great value pick. I wouldn't put him at 3. I only have 2 in my top tier.
Let me guess.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Kelsey,
right, no,
it's going to be Kelsey and Laporta.
Of course. I have Laporta first. I have Kelsey second. They're the only two that really have no question marks for me.
Yep.
You know, I love Mark Andrews. He's a great player. Casey's points are valid, but the if has to bump him down because you got to factor in even the fact that you've got to draft a handcuff. You don't need a handcuff for Sam Laporta. Just grab Sam Laporta and run. Travis Kelce, yes, he's older, but he's still an absolute beast, and he's getting passes from Mahomes. Meanwhile, he doesn't have a crowded receiver room, but I will make one other point about Laporta. Crowded receiver room can be a problem, but sometimes it helps. It makes it so that you can get open. Amon-Ra St. Brown is moving all over the place. I mean, there's going to be people who are going to have to pick their poison. And sometimes that poison is going to be Sam Laporta. So I have those as top 2. Beginning my next tier, you guys haven't mentioned him so far, but I think Trey McBride is the third tight end on the list for me. I think Kyler Murray coming back makes a huge difference. He showed all the signs of an absolute breakout. I think he's going to be I think he will be a top 3 tight end. I got Mark Andrews 4th, and sneaking in at number 5 is George Kittle. Another if, but he's got even more injury risk.
Yeah.
He's got even more injury risk than Mark Andrews. So I do prefer Mark Andrews a lot. Pitts, I have 6th. I love Pitts. I think Ross's points are 100% valid. I just wouldn't put him top 3. All right, move on with your list. Go ahead, Case.
Okay. I have Pitts 7th. Again, I love him. I have him in Dynasty. I'm hoping Cousins is the difference, but I also have him as a bust potential because maybe he's just not an NFL.
Not that good.
I mean, maybe part of the reason he hasn't put it together since his rookie year is because
he's had nobody throwing to him, though. I mean, and Cousins is he's a great
player. Yeah, he's great for tight ends. Okay, my number 4 is going to my list is obviously different than both of yours. My number 4 is going to shock you a little bit. I have Evan Engram as number 4.
Wow. All right. I have him 11. I mean, he's good.
No, but he was Trevor Lawrence's top red zone target last year when Calvin Ridley was there. Ridley's gone, and they've replaced it with what? Gabe Davis. It's Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk, and who else?
I don't even know.
Either Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie, or what? Parker Washington. Like, I'm not real worried about anybody else taking those targets from him. And he was a top 10 tight end last year. Number 5, I have Dalton Kincaid. Who's Josh Allen going to throw to? I mean, and so I think volume alone in Buffalo's offense catapults him up there. I have Trey McBride 6. I agree with you with Arizona. I love him. I would like to target him as a tight end in a lot of drafts because he and Marvin Harrison are going to get a buttload of targets. Then I have Kyle Pitts. I have George Kittle 8th because of the, again, injury risk. And he's of all the guys we've named, he's the only one who they use much of the time as an inline blocker. And I think that scares me more for injuries than everything else. I have Jake Ferguson 9th and Dallas Goedert 10th.
All right. I'm just going to take a comment from Ayush first. He says, thank you, guys. I will take whoever falls to me at 10 between A.J. Brown, Jefferson, and Wilson, and I'll go Gibbs. I love Gibbs at that second pick, by the way. If I do this, when do you guys prefer me to draft my quarterback tight end? Too early for quarterback tight end in the 4th. Guys, what do you say about that?
It depends who's there in the 4th. I mean, if you get to the 4th and you have one of that top tier quarterbacks left to you, a Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, one of those guys, then no, it's not too early. If there's a run on quarterbacks and you're looking at quarterback 5, 6, 7, or 8, then I'm going to wait until I can get 9, 10, or 11, I think, because Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, those guys aren't that far behind 6, 7, 8. Tight end, again, it depends who's there for you. If you can get a top tight end, although in a PPR league, you probably won't be able to. It's not too early if you can get one of those top tight ends.
I mean, you have Mark Andrews ranked number 1. I'm fairly certain you can get him in the 4th round.
And I would take him in the 4th or 5th round probably if he's there.
Now
I would wait on quarterback. Get your tight end, get your wide receiver, get your running back.
I would rather wait on quarterback and take Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins or something like that.
Or CJ Stroud or
I love if you can get CJ. Listen, I think if CJ Stroud is available in the 4th, you got to grab him. I really think he's going to be that good, but I'm playing him up maybe too much. We'll see.
Yeah,
Ayush then said, I love Pitts as well. He is a 7th rounder in my league. I will say my history with man crushes, not good. So you just back off a little bit. Okay. I'm going to mention some guys that you didn't talk about. Case Dalton Kincaid, you did talk about, but I just did want to say, I mean, he's a big time talent. He could take a step forward, and there's a lot of openings in that offense. You're right. One guy you did not mention, though, is David Njoku. And listen, that's not me being a homer, because you guys know I'm not even sure I'm a Browns fan. But David Njoku, he piles up big numbers, and the Cleveland offense is, it should be clicking on all cylinders. Some of it might. I mean, we saw it clicking on all cylinders even with Chubb out. So I feel that that's a safe kind of mid-round value pick. The other guy I really like is Dalton Schultz. The Houston offense is amazing. And
I have him as a sleeper, yeah.
And part of that is Joe Mixon, by the way. Joe Mixon is a very underrated back. He has been for a while, and they're gonna ride him there. So you got 3 great receivers. You got Dalton Schultz. You got Joe Mixon. You got CJ Stroud throwing the ball. I want any part of that offense I can get. Ross, let's turn it back to you and have you comment on some guys.
So I'm not going to repeat the same names. I just want to throw a couple tight ends that I really think they're going to have pretty good years this year compared to last year. I think Freiermuth at Pittsburgh, having Fields as your starting quarterback, will help him a lot. I think Freiermuth is their main tight end. He'll get involved in that offense, and this guy's a big dude. He's hard to tackle. I love Freiermuth this year, and you can probably get him late. And even as a backup tight end,
I'm sure you can get him really late, because he didn't perform well last season.
He wasn't that great. TJ Hawkinson, supposedly he is. I know his quarterback JJ McCarthy's out for the year. I get it, but I feel Hawkinson. I know he came off a big surgery. He hasn't been practicing with the team yet, but he's very close according to the head coach. I think Hawkinson can be back by the end of September, and if he is, I think that's a great value pick or somebody I haven't talked about. I think he'll have a good year, because I think that these, like Sam Darnold, will be dumping into the tight end a lot, because I don't think they trust him that much. And another guy that I feel that's we have to talk about him. I will talk about Bowers, the rookie tight end from Georgia. I know he plays for the Raiders, and in history, the tight ends at the rookie spot have not had great years. This guy is an exception. This guy is a great receiver, great speed, great everything about him is great. And I think that if you can take him late, go ahead. I think Bowers his ceiling is up here. I mean, he's that good. So those are the guys I just wanted to bring up, because we didn't talk about them yet.
Yeah, well, Hawkinson is definitely worth mentioning, because once he comes back, he shoots way up the list. So yeah, you're missing time with him, and there's some risk that maybe he doesn't come back as well. But once TJ Hawkinson's back to full form, I'd have him as my number 3 probably tight end. I mean, he's close. Way up.
He's close according to the coach, and he's on the field for practice. I mean, he's practicing not with the team, but he's on the sidelines, like running up and down, and he's not out there doing drills yet, but he's getting really close, and he's way ahead of schedule. So, like you said, it's not a bad idea. It's a risky thing, but you can do it.
I'm going to mention one of my. He's really my top sleeper. I really like Luke Musgrave. I think I just think that's a great offense. He was, he's a talented guy, and he's the kind of guy I could see taking a big step forward here. Yeah. Also, a little shout out to Ross for saying Pat Freiermuth pretty much right on.
Almost.
It was very close. That's a tough one.
Yeah,
that's a very tough one. Case, who else has not been mentioned that you want to comment on?
Well, I'm looking at teams and looking like, where are they going to throw the ball? So I like Hunter Henry in New England. There's no wide receivers there to take.
I want to take anybody. Hold on. I want to take anybody from England this year.
I'm talking end of the draft type of guy.
Drunk,
the other one I like.
You're walking around, stumbling around the living room, and you just take him.
Whatever. Yep. And then Tyler Conklin on the Jets. Again,
that's a good one.
This is the Aaron Rodgers effect, right? If he's healthy, I like Tyler Conklin. Garrett Wilson is going to be the main target. Who's their number 2 receiver? Can anybody tell me? Tell me?
Yes.
It's why am I blanking?
Who is it?
It's Al Toon. Oh no, wait, that was the 1980s. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's close. It is Mike Williams, the oft-injured Mike Williams of Chargers fame, and
University of Clemson.
Yep. And number 3 is Xavier Gibson, And if you can tell me where he went to college, you're better than I am, because I don't
University
know.
of Florida.
Okay, thank you.
Ross is the man for that.
But there's just not there's not a lot going on there. I think Conklin, linebackers will be keyed on Breece Hall. There's just play there, and Aaron Rodgers is a wizard. So I'm going with Tyler Conklin as one of the best values at the end of the draft you can get.
All right, Albert Merriquin says, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you, Albert. And he says, Tyler Conklin has had 87 targets in 3 straight seasons. Case, what say you?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Now he's going to have, it's not going to be targets from poor throwers who don't throw accurately into his catch radius. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers who puts a zinger right between the numbers.
I think that is a great value pick. One more.
Yeah, and I have him in our sleeper league too. I picked him up during the offseason.
Nice work. Okay, Ayush says, Mahomes, Hurts, Allen at 15 are there at pick 39, so Andrews will be there. Also at pick 63, aka early 6th Burrow, and Stroud will still be there. I mean, if you can get Stroud there or Burrow there, that's fantastic. And so you got to wait on quarterback if it's looking like that. With that in mind, I will go Jefferson, Gibbs, Waddle. But listen, I'm totally for that, Ayush. But to echo Casey's point, please don't let us sway you away from what you really wanted to do. If you've got a plan and you think it can work, you do you. And listen, we're not right about everything.
Yeah, we're not undefeated in our fantasy football careers. So.
And I'm not saying that to cover our asses about it. I'm saying it to have you have the season you want to have. If you think that's the way to go, you should go the way you want to go. But if you like what we said, go with it. All right, guys, anything to add on tight ends before we wrap up? Okay, so I know you have to run shortly. Any busts that you want to put out there? I would say Dalton Kincaid is a risk for a bust, even though I also like him. But, and Dalton Schultz was my value pick. So sleepers, bust, value picks. Ross, anything to add?
I'm worried about Njoku, your guy in Cleveland, a lot. I don't think he's going to repeat the season he had last year. I don't. I think he's going to digress. I think he had a great season last year because of all the injuries in Cleveland. I don't think he's going to repeat it this year. So he's the one that I feel is going to be a bust. And you heard it from me first, Ross, the boss. And you can quote me on that also.
All right. Case, anyone to add?
Nope. You guys covered it all.
We covered it all. So what we'll do is next week we are going to, are we going to do running backs or wide receivers? I'm not even sure we decided. All right. Well, I'm going to say wide receivers because running backs are the things that change the most in training camp. So I think we want to wait on that for people. For people who are drafting, it's better for us to wait on running backs. So next week, same time, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, we're going to do wide receivers. The following week, we'll do running backs. And then is it the following week, Ross, that we have our MFSN draft, or is that the same week as the running back? I think it's the same week as the running back.
Same week as running backs. Our draft is the 29th. Is that correct, Casey Seinfeld, at 4:15?
Which is the same day we're doing our running backs.
Yep. Ayush just said, LOL, someone gave me Njoku last year midseason as a throw-in a random trade offer, and Njoku went nuts in the playoffs. I won the whole thing. That's fantasy football for you. So,
I know.
Keep searching for
you can have the best team for 16 weeks.
Yeah, it may not matter at all. All right, guys, it's been a pleasure. Casey, Ross, thanks for joining us here. And guys, we will see you next week. Looking forward to more talk about fantasy football. Season starts soon. Draft is in 2 weeks.